It is mission impossible. I have to finish this show within 40 minutes, if not sooner. So we're gonna blast through the show on the cruise ship. We're turning on the afterburners on the cruise ship in the sky. Welcome back, everyone. Artist Journal, July 6th, 2023, broadcasting from this wonderful, beautiful blue sea in my mind in Berlin, Germany. My name is Adrian Pocobelli, and welcome back. And I am not joking. I need to run, so let's go through this. Incredible artwork here released in the last 48 hours. As usual, Thursdays are crazy shows. It's a real editing process, and usually it still turns into 50 minutes. So let's go Uxine with a beautiful work here. Kind of is tonda the word that we have for circular works? There's that famous Michelangelo circular work. Maybe we can find out really quickly, but let's look at the title first, Alive 110%. So humor, which is nice, dark humor here. And You're Not Free, Existential Maelstrom, which is a whirlpool, famously in Edgar Allan Poe, the Maelstrom. 99%, little danger sign here. This looks like a familiar painting here, but I can't quite place it. Interesting, the disembodied guy in the robe with the skull and the eyes and the halo with the pirate flag gloriously in pixel, and these beautiful retro Macs here dripping light. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's poetry just to describe what I like to call almost Uxine a martial artist of sorts. This martial artist, as you're going to see here, and you got to love the reverse copyright. You can just tell Uxine has been engaged with image making for a very long time here. And it's just so obvious to me with all of the fun and dexterity, that Uxine has. So this was an edition of 11, and it minted out at 111, and it was gone in 1 minute, basically. It was minted at 1605, was listed, and it was gone in a minute. It was probably faster. A little hack here, if someone mints and you're waiting for the buy now, don't wait for the notification, just reload the page. So a little alpha for those that are watching here. So Uxine back on the scene, and I have to say I quite like this. Mastering Dopamine, the ultimate guide to rewire your brain for happiness and fulfillment. Some more humor here. This is quite brilliant in a lot of ways. Again, one of the ways is how almost like this dithering feels like it's almost like not registered, like exactly on, like it seems like there's different layers of dithering here, and they don't seem like they're exactly on top of each other, which again, reminiscent of Warhol here in these kind of Twitter GIFs that Uxine is doing. Another nice part here is the contrast of this, dithered shading with these just, blocky, almost roughly painted buttons here on this like retro computer. I almost want to call it like a Coleco or something computer, and then a little unhappy face bouncing around like Pong or something. There's quite a bit in here. I mean, he doesn't even bother to mint these things, as far as I know. Maybe one day he will. So just, again, dexterity. Here's another, this is a tweet by Uxine, right? And, as you scroll through, so again, just someone, a heavy-duty image maker. It was just a matter of time for Uxine to get recognition. Big thank you to Clown Vamp and everybody who showed up yesterday, including Runetoon, who had plumbing issues at his apartment and still managed to make it. So big shout out and thanks. It was a fantastic show. It is edited, well, not quite edited, but it will be uploaded in the next day or so. So it was just awesome. Clown Vamp is such a friendly person. As I said in the intro of that show, a thought leader in the space. I mean, I've learned a lot from Clown Vamp, and this was another opportunity to learn a ton. He shared a lot. So it was super interesting. So Clown Vamp on remixing art history with AI. It was a great show, and I'm just thrilled. It was funny. He was calling, I can't remember exactly how he put it. It was like the Oprah of, like the art Oprah or something like that. He was calling me, which was hilarious. And I bring this up here. We were talking about the visual novel, and I was like, yeah, I think you've called one of your series like visual novel. He's like, I think you actually brought that up, and it is something that's been in my head for a while. This series I thought of as a visual novel. This is from like 2012 to 2014. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because Clown Vamp was saying you should show it. And so I am, very quickly. So I never finished this. It was actually 12 parts to this visual novel. This celebration, really, of media here. And so here it is, these big oil paintings, and I spent far too long. I did these 2 paintings in 1 year, and basically in all my free time, spending far too much time. This is visual analysis, a real financial theme. Actually, at least in the second one. This is To Mars and the Stars, What If 2012 Never Happened? Kind of referring to Terence McKenna, because this was actually finished in 2012. And there's always that end of the Mayan calendar meme that Terence McKenna really popularized at the end of the day. Visual analysis, another word for technical analysis. But here I'm applying it to your whole life. So it was a very kind of meta, ambitious work, The Speculator. This is a very famous financial speculator newsletter writer. Maybe one of the original newsletter writers, James Dines, he just passed away. And here's a famous saying of his, you have to look wrong to be right. And so just kind of hilarious. And I could actually go on, but I don't have the time. Here's fundamentals, here is mass psychology, here is visual analysis, and here is inner baggage. The 4 kind of realms that Dines like to use. And here's dynamic noetic objects. Again, 2 Wall Street guys looking on a beautiful hallucinatory object in the darkness. It was actually from a vision I had in a dream there. And then finally, these are the 5 that got done. The Threads of Fate. And here, here's the guy meeting the girl, and then here, tomorrow. I was like, how do you depict tomorrow and the future? And my solution was actually The Price is Right. Plinko. Plinko is where this little puck goes down and bounces around, and then it ends up in one of these little categories. So I had my nice little solution here, and I kind of had a medieval vibe on the frame. So anyways, and finally, there's the guy at work, there with like the generic parents, they're in school, first kiss, first job, and all these threads are kind of interweaving with the stars. And I was actually going to put 3 little, ethereal things, kind of fog coming up, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. Anyway, that was my visual novel. I got 5 paintings through, and there are some unfinished ones. All the designs are there for the rest, but I doubt I'll ever finish that. Continuing on, thank you for the comments. Yeah, so McRenders, thank you, and Bettina Verlaine, thank you for all the comments here, and Nuggeteer. So yeah, just thank you for all the comments. I'm not going to be able to read them today. I simply have to run through it, but I totally appreciated it. And yeah, actually McRenders, definitely taking my 3D brushes and directly exporting and importing them, and sometimes just using as frame reference, but loving combining them all. So again, enjoying the exports. Right? So again, thank you for the comments. This was a great comment, I felt, for, just really, I don't want to call it a confessional sort of writing, but someone who's just being honest with the realities of being an artist. And as she puts here, Empress Trash, it's a boom and bust business. GM, this last month, I made more money from my solo one-of-one art sales than I've made in my entire crypto art and trad art career. This is a major milestone for me, which I'm very proud to share. When the market downturned last year, after some adjustment, I told myself I wouldn't let it dictate my career or success. I kept trying to exhibit, organizing group shows and drops, learning new software, experimenting with new technique, and minting work. This is key, because if it's at least in the market, from a market perspective, if what you're doing is not selling, try other things. And it doesn't mean that what you're doing, sometimes works can just be undiscovered too. So it doesn't mean stop doing the other stuff, but don't be afraid to try new things. As my friends around me started to get more flowers and success, instead of being a jerk about it, I genuinely was happy they succeeded. I continued to try to keep doors open for others as they were open for me. When I felt close to failing, I expressed it to those I trusted to vent and recenter and for advice instead of taking it out on them. So stayed positive, in other words. Talked to my friends about it, but basically I didn't get, envious about it, which is very important, actually. And fortunes can change, and again, this is a boom-bust business. So if people are doing well, it can really evaporate really, really quickly, like in a month or two. So just be happy that there is success around you and really celebrate other people's successes. I think a lot of us know that, but in case you do struggle with that, because everybody, at times it might cross your mind, especially if you're younger. It might cross your mind. But the older you get, the more you just realize how finite this whole situation is. And, you realize how fragile and how it can all be taken away. And really, you just have to enjoy goodness and happiness happening out there. So it is totally the way to be, which is what Empress Trash was doing. The patience and kindness of those close to me cannot be overstated. Even with this milestone, so even doing well, I still stress out and keep my nose down to the best I can and keep on to the grind that got me here. Absolutely. Just because I obtained very nice sales this month doesn't mean it will be consistent and sustainable. Absolutely. This I know from a decade of trying to be a professional artist. It can be feast with months of famine. It doesn't mean I will stop. I know a guy who in 2000, I probably told you the story, Christopher Winter. What did he call? He had a ton of press in the early 2000s, and he really became a thing with this speculative realism, I believe he called it, and really just boomed in 2008, made a bunch of money, bought a sports car and an apartment with the money from the contemporary art world. And in the following years, it got really quiet, and only now in the last 3 years has his career kind of resurrected. So here's someone who is buying property and then a few years later was kind of obscure again, not getting any attention. So it's just another example here. To express the gratitude I feel for the abundance that has come my way this month is almost impossible. There are quite literally too many people to thank for everything that has happened between artists, friends, curators, and collectors who keep pushing me and my work out, who keep pushing my work. Thank you, and I love you all. So really I thought just another illustration of the reality of being an artist. It is feast or famine. That is the nature of the business. Unknown collector. GM friends, seen the low reserve or zero reserve debate a lot again lately. For most, this will just end up selling their art for 0.05 ETH or something close to that. If this is fine for you and you want to let the very slow market decide or need the money now, go for it. Yeah, there are no rules. For the rest, I would just say sit it out and value your art accordingly. Sales are slow, and the only thing that could change that for you is to find collectors. So instead of lowering your reserve, try to connect yourself with possible collectors of your art first. And again, I'm kind of back to the advantage of Tezos is that it's cheap. I see works still being sold here despite a fairly tricky bear market because people are selling works for from $1 to $15, oftentimes $20, sometimes more, but often it's in the $1 to $20 range. So even in a bear market, it's sort of like, what does a beer cost you these days, right? So that's, again, if you're not on Tezos and you're only on ETH and you're not selling, you might want to try Tezos just to, even Solana. Look at what Gogolitis did. And finally, remember sales strategies are very individual and always depend on things like collector base, what is your art selling for generally, or what is your long-term strategy, and a lot more factors. And you do have to be careful a little bit about underselling, right? Because if collectors spend a whole bunch of money and then all of a sudden you're giving away art for $1 and people have been paying $300, well, so there's a lot to, it's a lot to figure out. But it's good to experiment too, and don't take it too seriously either, and just have fun with it. So try to realistically weigh the pros and cons of such actions for yourself. So there's Unknown Collector, a new profile picture there. And Unknown Collector is not going to be on this week's Twitter Spaces, but on next week's. So a week from Wednesday, Unknown Collector is going to be on our Twitter Spaces. So that's going to be rad. Speaking of rad, Kurt Hustle Collective with merch. Kurt, so we have KHC on a t-shirt, and you can even order it. I wrote, where do I order? At 1997 World, and I went, and you can go. So maybe we'll go on another episode here. Actually, let's just we're going to speed through this episode. Look at how cool that is, though. Look at how cool that is. And let me just see if this loads up. So 1997.world, and look at that, Dream Savers. Yeah, and I think this is the one I want. 1-900, 1997, 900, call now. 24 euros, and actually, Kurt JNK was mentioning I might want to use the American website because Euro website is maybe a little more expensive. Anyway, look at how super cool that is. So Kurt Hustle Collective out in the physical world is super exciting. This is super exciting as well. Ed Marola streaming, okay? And look at this. Marola style pixel art masterclass. I caught the last 5 minutes and it was brilliant. I mean, there was music. And he's talking.
Eraser?
Talking about his process. So, look at how great that looks too. Ed can just mint money. So, this got me really excited because I was starting to think to myself, you know, with this show, then you have something like this, it almost turns into a network. It's like the Pixel Art Network or something along those lines. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? You know, it's back to that, you know, Terrence McKenna line, create your own roadshow. And, you know, this roadshow is getting bigger. So that is super fun. Give Ed a subscribe there. He's already got 240. I mean, he did fabulously with that Metallica video, incredibly. So, and here's another one, which is just awesome. Live stream test 1. So a work minted on object for only a Tezos. And look at how great this looks. Kind of has a bit of a AI structure to it, like a Midjourney structure where you get the 4 images. I'm not sure if that is the basis for this. But a lot of just beautiful, interesting things happening, going outside the borders here. And then this person, you know, almost like this ancient figure here, mystical figure, and this rainbow hair, and then everything, just having fun. And it's quite fascinating to see Ed work. You see the joy of making art. So beautiful piece here, the color. Only a Tezos, edition of 50. And here's a 1 of 1 for 150, the Reader, which is a cool Procreate over Midjourney. So back to Midjourney here. So this is another advantage to using a lot of tools. Then whenever you sort of hit a roadblock, it's like, oh yeah, let's go to that tool and, you know, okay, what should I do next? Let's bring some Midjourney. It's nice to have a few places to go as an artist, you know, because you do, if you're always working on the very same kind of series, it can get tedious. So it's good, and then it's good to just go other places, have a different, it's like eating the same meal every day. So it's nice to have different like ways of working. So all to say, this is beautiful. See, he's using Procreate here. The last one was Acebright. Use different softwares and everything. So just a cool work, and another kind of enigmatic title, beautiful frame and everything. This nice little red mark here, and the movement and everything. So just beautiful work here. A work by Rat Cloaksy, and this one here, which is gorgeously painted at the bottom, this beautiful grass here. I mean, like a incredible painting in a museum. I mean, it's beautifully painted everywhere, but the grass really just captured me, shall we say. This is to raise funds for Ukraine, for the armed forces of Ukraine. Edition of 1,000 for 2 Tezos. A gorgeous work here. Feels like it may be a pastiche here, but I'm not sure. I feel like it feels recognizable of some almost like a World War I image. You see it in the cap here, and kind of an interesting, like from a content perspective. I mean, you have this wheat field and this kind of maybe a house on the wheat field, a rural area almost like Saskatchewan here, and kind of a dark sky. And then you have this big gap here. Again, almost like the trenches of World War I, where you see almost like a figure here that's missing a leg, another figure kind of cropped here. So the specter of death here and the drums of war with this young man having to deal with this, it's actually a little too terrifying to actually think about too far. Interesting, enigmatic title, August 24th. And again, yeah, so if you want to help out Rat Cloaksy, edition of 1,000 for 2 Tezos. And I also brought it to look up close here, because Cloaksy is doing some pretty interesting things here with the brushwork of the trees. I mean, it's almost an outrage to go too deep and to look at how beautiful the process of this art is when you consider what this is about. But nevertheless, there's only so much, what you can do is you can buy this work and that will help out. But all to say, yeah, it has to be recognized here, nevertheless, of how gorgeously painted this is and the skill that is at work here. So all to say, another gorgeous work, a poetic work, a gripping work from Rat Cloak. Continuing on, Bizaya, Ice Pink. So continuing this Sky is the Limit, almost like Heaven series and Paradise series. And again, and who is this again? LV and the Witherspoons. I should know who is this Kanye West? I don't even know. I should know. I have huge gaps, and there's the beautiful colors of Bizaya and the beautiful textures and the wonderful kind of soft clouds here with the beautifully painted roses and the comfortable chair and the wonderful shoes, all the wonderful details. Edition of 10, nice low edition. Let's just see what it sold for, 30 Tezos. So to me, this is like, if you make work that people want to buy, you can sell for 30 Tezos as an edition, make it a really low edition, so it's always a balancing act, the price and the edition number, isn't it? Sold out in 6 minutes. It was 6 minutes or no, in an hour. Minted at $4.50 and sold out at $5.40, $5.36. So beautiful work here. Fua, Big Bug Marathon. So a new one from Rinnyfish. Let's just load this up. I don't think there's any volume here. So just another mysterious bug here. Almost looks like a bug bird of sorts and almost like baby clothing or something like 19th century baby clothing. A little Twitter person, maybe. And everything, a little juice drink and all the fun out there. So beautiful. And again, these kind of psychedelic, almost like translucent colors here. These psychedelic pastels, really just beautiful. Edition of 15 and just minted. Continuing on, Dan Control with another animal. A very interesting swan, beautifully painted here. And I'm always interested in the background as well with Dan, like the solutions. So here it's in the water, creating a circular gradient here. But it all goes out. You see the circles just turn, so it's all water, one assumes here. So interesting work here from Dan Control. Edition of 50 for 6 Tezos, 35 left. And check this out. So the Hallucinogenic Plants series by Dan Control and Ricardo Malio is quite something. Like, it's quite moving. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a wonderful collaboration. Like, this is, you know what I thought to myself? This is way better than what I'm seeing at the contemporary art, museums. It's great. It's beautiful. It's really awesome in so many different ways. So here's one, and it kind of reminded me the title of the series, Hallucinogenic Plants. I mentioned this book before and that I was going to bring it up. Richard Evans Schultes made this golden guide called Hallucinogenic Plants, and some of you are going to know who Richard Evans Schultes is, a very famous Harvard. I'm not sure if he was a botanist, but like a really one of the great scholars, really, of hallucinogenic plants. And what's so interesting about this, I think, it's kind of before psychedelics, which is almost like a different kind of word, before hallucinogenic plants got politicized. I mean, you had a golden guide. These are like guides for kids, practically, little science books, So interesting, isn't it? Just interesting. I had that book. I used to work in a used bookstore, so I came across that one, and it's just kind of a one-of-a-kind kind of book out there. Here's another one, Psilocybe mexicana. So psilocybin here, mushrooms. Pretty gorgeous work here. And a real just testament to the scene, if you ask me. This holds up anywhere, and the music is outstanding, I might add. Maybe that's why I'm so inspired by this series. So the processing, everything about it. I mean, this is just, 10 out of 10 here. So beautiful work. Kappa Sage, Gold and Pain. So an interesting painting here from Kappa, and I believe this is new. So again, kind of going with the kind of big scale composition, and here we see the designer kind of scarf, but as a snake. So what is it, Burberry? Like these Burberry snakes, and they're supreme and kind of red and black camouflage, and all these figures here, and some skulls in the background, and this big stage here, almost like just really interesting, and almost like Saint Sebastian here with the arrows. Pretty fascinating, and almost like these, martial art type bandages here. Pretty cool. Gold and Pain, edition of 8, very low edition for 12 Tezos each, and basically a nice 100 Tezos for Kappa. Nice work. Gloom Tube with a pretty kind of another work that's kind of hard to look at. 2 simultaneous fireworks accidents in broad daylight, so celebrating July 4th Gloom Tube style. So a bit of a gory work here where people blow off their fingers with fireworks, which apparently happens all the time. So just interesting, classic, Gloom Tube homage to the 4th of July. Mental Noise, Lauryn Hill. So, of course, I think she's from the Fugees, famous musician, in doing the rabbit costume and playing with the rabbit image, and there's a little Grammy there. And so just a cool work by Mental Noise here. And that is available for 8 Tezos, and there are 10 left. Continuing on, Louis Osborne, To the Moon. An interesting piece here also from July 4th, although I think Louis Osborne is in England, so out of Bristol, I believe. So just, so not related to Independence Day. Cool work. I always like space works, and so there it is, just nice and simple. So you can get this for 28 Tezos, edition of 50. Let's just see what it sold for on primary. 20 Tezos, and was gone basically within, 20, 30 minutes. Pretty impressive. That's 1,000 Tezos, right? Continuing on, Cycles by Dana Ulama. So just a cool work on Nifty Gateway. Trademark colors. Again, cool music. So just really interesting for 0.2 ETH. 3 editions sold, so bringing in 0.6. I think there are 7 left. And Max Strecker. Op box. Yeah, it's got an op art feel to it, as you can see in the title. And it's an interesting, trademark Max Strecker abstraction, geometric abstraction, static. And it's quite interesting, actually, because you start to see changes here. Like here you see, it's not all uniform. Like there is something to this, and they do almost switch sides a little bit. It's hard to conceptualize. But you can start to, but it's a complex image. That's what I'm trying to say. I love the color too. I love the color. The Great Pagliacci by Daniel W. with Rahimiha And so interesting. I'm not sure what the collaboration is because this looks quite a bit like Daniel W. through, but maybe the design was Rahimiha. So cool work, sold out, edition of 20, and now it's 95 on secondary, sold out at 10 Tezos. So that is impressive. So nice work too. I think a pretty famous, I should know who the great Pagliacci is, maybe a famous clown, I'm not sure. Good looking work. Popple, Princess of Water Gazing. So this was another beautiful work that came out. So part of that, I think it's called Sanitarium series. And so kind of, again, these monster figures. Again, Popple came up with this on an old computer over Christmas. And here it's become like this very, like they do very well too on Popple's feed there. On Popple's Twitter feed, these monsters do fabulously. And my favorite part is the reflection and the treatment of the water. And somehow Popple has managed to make pixel art new with this kind of shimmering, thing, just shimmering images in all of the works here. And here you see, and the water is beautifully done. So you get the shimmering also with the water that goes kind of horizontally here. So beautiful work, and you see the eyes and everything, and the forest. It's beautiful. A tribute to John Bauer, who I'm not sure who that is. And there is a poem there, Princess of Water Gazing. So cool work. Let's just see what it was selling for. 15 Tezos only on primary, edition of 25. And look who's back. The guy who does the music for the show at the start and the end. The great Tradscape is back on the scene, which is always a welcome. It's always a welcome return. Mellum Moths. So let's see if we can play this. It's pretty long, by the way, so we're not going to play the whole thing. But playing with these kind of medieval elf motif. And he makes the music too. Beautiful song here, and I guess it just loops here. So a real nice combination of sound and music. Now it's 44 Tezos, and let's just see what he was selling that for primary on. 18 Tezos each, and sold, yeah, there was only, and then he burned 7. Wow. So I guess a few didn't sell for a few hours and just said, okay, that's it. And so there it is. Mellum Moths, edition of 8 by Tradscape. Totally awesome. Speaking of awesome, look at this like two-headed snake. Aw Heck, shout out to Aw Heck. Thank you for sending this to me. Kind of almost like reminiscent of the Marquee mask by Lorna Mills. This is someone called Tim Lahan, and just working with a very simple contrast. And I tell you, look at how many likes, 4,000. So just a very simple contrast of this almost like spray paint snake, and then with this hard edge contrast. So an example of contrast at work, and feels kind of new. And then look at this. This, my friends, looks like a physical work. I thought this was a digital work. So how cool is that? Let's see if we can bring up Tim Lahan's page. Look at how great all this looks. So kind of almost, it's like kind of a fusion of digital and physical. Let's call it this. It's using digital tropes, like with this kind of hard edge pixelation. It's hard not to see that as like a digital mask with like the dark, with the and so in the colors here, in the blue, with the snakes and this beautiful two-headed snakes, in the black with the flowers, etc. Just a beautiful contrast here, and using digital tropes in a physical work, and quite effectively. I wonder if he shows it's almost like maybe kind of new for this artist. And look, was doing well before, but here again, trying new things. The importance of trying new things. Black Market, Stalomir with Explainer Gallery, and this continuing this Trader series. This is an edition of 25, so great pixel artist Stalomir here. Cool color, kind of almost monochromatic, except for this green and red here, but beautiful work. And so, again, kind of like this sci-fi, exotic sci-fi sort of theme content, and these beautiful stars here that are flashing. So just very cool work here with Explainer Gallery with this series, and who's gotten like a ton of awesome artists on Tezos. They're very friendly. I did work with them, and they're fantastic to work with. John, July 4th. So celebrating Independence Day in skeleton style here, in pixelated skeleton style. And here is a hose with beautiful square water coming out. That's my favorite part, but I also like the kind of beach theme here. And it almost looks like someone's backyard that's been turned into a little beach here. Concrete beach with a little bit of sand. So beautiful work, buy for 150 Tezos. So this is sold out. And it was selling on primary for 50 Tezos each. So a cool 1,250 Tezos for John on Independence Day. And look at this masterpiece. This beautiful work here by Figments, Reanimation. Edition of 12, I was lucky to get one. I mean, this series is getting there's just nothing like this. And you see it on the market too. I mean, the whole page is just basically sold out. And if you want to buy on secondary, it's expensive. Again, I was lucky to be online when it minted, and I was able to pick one up. There's that kind of, almost that mystical figure again. It's just so original. It seems to be using like video game tropes, shall we say, to create these just wild scenes. Like again, this looks like Ultima 4, this floor here, and even just the sun, but it's almost kind of glitched out. Like this, it looks like a big sun, right? But then it's kind of like just kind of shooting out, kind of messy, right? Which is nice. What my friend would call loose, more accurately, just kind of loose. It's beautiful. This sold, I believe, for 8 Tezos on primary. And yeah, I bought one, and all of a sudden you're getting offers like right away for 15 and 20. So, or 15, I should say. So cool work from Cap'n. And check this out too. Element Lee, Arch and Pool. I didn't see where this was minted. I don't know if it's been minted, but just super interesting experimental pixel art, again, from Element Lee. It's bold. I mean, it's really bold in its minimalism, but it's super consistent, and it just becomes super interesting. Really interesting artist. More interesting pixel art, Nicholas Dietrich, Rune Seascape Under Moonlight. So I find this quite interesting too, because it feels like a piece of suburbia or something, but then kind of abstracted here with this square, and then just a weird kind of machine here and a dithered gradient. And so just an interesting work, and I think the colors are particularly interesting too here. Look at this beautiful gradient here. So I imagine that's the gradient tool in Aseprite. Zooming out of the screen and remembering the real world out there. So Nicholas Dietrich's version of Touching Grass, maybe. So still available on primary for 3 Tezos, 11 left. So check that out. Renki with a cool work here. This would hang well with Françoise Gamma, wouldn't it? Kozaki is the name of the work. It's an edition of 10, and there's only one left. So Renki continuing to sell pretty well here, and super prolific, and just a really nice kind of simple piece. Or actually, sorry, one is listed. One is listed, so get it while you can. And Datura, Panorama Iceberg. And how are we doing for time? I got to run through the rest of this episode. Edition of 10 for 6 Tezos, just more classic Datura work, just super cool. Representational, but on the verge of abstract, and just kind of this glitchy, nervous GIF, really. And it's interesting. This is a GIF, not an MP4, because you almost start to lose the squares here. They're almost rounded squares here, interestingly, in the way this is rendered. Shifting ice blocks, Panorama Iceberg, 6 Tezos. There are 3 left. And this was cool. Mick Renders, watching. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I don't know if Mick Renders made this. I didn't see it minted anywhere. I looked. I thought this is totally something to mint. Mick, if you haven't, and really nice, just kind of bottom area. I'm sure it'd sell out right away. So cool work here. Oh, here it is. Let's bring it up super quick. Edition of 5, and yes, it sold out right away. Actually, no, it took like 12 hours. So Oh no, sorry, that took an hour at 888. So nice work for Mick Renders. Looks great. And a beautiful, to me, this is a super inspiring work by Cap'n. Cap'n just posted this on the Twitter feed, and why it's so inspiring is it's just black and white and with white squares, and it's incredibly poetic in what's left out. It's so simple, and again, so I look at like, oh, you could do this, like, yeah, it to me, it's just really makes me want to get out my Pixel, Ace Bright or whatever your tool is and start making some pixel art. It's gorgeous. And again, nature for whatever reason works incredibly well with pixel art. And my reasoning for that is because it's square, it's rectilinear, and it's, contrasting with the curvilinear organic forms of nature. And I think that is part of the reason it seems to work. It's the digital representing the natural world. There's the chaos of the natural world, being represented by the, mathematical geometric order of the digital world. It's just an epic contrast. It never gets old. Beautiful collaboration, Lo Colos doing the sound here, and Kareem Safa, who makes those wonderful pixel art factories. Almost like a disco ball here. So again, this is all in the last 48 hours. Buy now for 32 Tezos, and there are 11 left. So, look at how much incredible art has been released in the last 48 hours. I think this is all new, as far as I know. This is all the last 2 days. So that is incredible. Byte by bit. Edition of 1 for 10 Tezos. I think maybe playing with it's Fantavision, but kind of taking the animation to the next level here. So, interesting piece. I just showed a fragment there. Animation made by Fantavision, EGA 16 color. So I think this might be a different version of Fantavision that Byte by Bit is playing with. Of course, always using the retro tools and experimenting with them. This is pretty cool too. JoyKid Illuminate came out on July 5th, so yesterday, and that sold out. Again, you make a cool pixel artwork. It's just like made to order, sold out at 5 Tezos each within like 3 minutes. Pretty amazing, right? So, priced really nicely too. Just a cool work, cool abstract. Continuing on, another super cool abstract. I quite like this one by Santiago. This is what I carry with me, 15,000 pixels. So that's interesting, just the way that's written. So 15,000 pixels, very interesting. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of funny to try and, compare these. Like this one for me was like quite successful. It's funny. This is not the gas station. And just the power, it's about the process and trying out different things. And at a certain point, you're just going to get different results. Again, it's kind of like this inquiry. We're back to this qualitative science idea. So I'm really enjoying this inquiry that Santiago is up to here. Silva Santos. How are we doing? I actually have to really wrap this up. Look at how beautiful this is. Silva Santos with an awesome Nintendo glitch ROM through the space. Just like really doing nice work here. Here's another one, Glitchscape 2. This is a smaller edition. So just interesting. And Sabato back, this is so cool too. Jester and Canvas, automatic painting in a glitched Mario Paint ROM. It's like, why wasn't this done earlier? But of course, Sabato figured it out, I think. Maybe it's been done otherwise. But this is brilliant. This is quite brilliant. So this is also on Zora, the low gas Ethereum layer 2. So it's always good to do stuff like this too on new networks, because maybe you get like some sort of airdrop at some point if you're using the network. I picked one of these up, a new drawing exercise. And again, this looks like, taking Deluxe Paint and glitching it out. So we're back to combination here. So a really nice, very low edition of 12, in case people didn't notice, a very low edition drawing exercise for 15 Tezos each. There are still 6 left, so the market is sleeping on that one. Gorgeous orange red on there too. You can guess who this is, Lorna Mills with a super cool work. I didn't see it minted, but I love it. I remember these action figures and everything. I just love it. Simple and cool. And here's another gorgeous work from Lorna Mills. Look at that green. Look at that beautiful, beautiful green here. And just kind of a fun, exciting, easy to consume work here. May I Rule. Still available for 15 Tezos. There are 21 left. Ricano, Game Over. So again, playing with this narrative here, narrative style of going between these two kind of scenes in the work here. And again, it starts to approach a little bit of, like it has a narrative to it, which is part of what I love about this. And then also just this meta of the larger room, but then there's the story in the screen. The story in the story, I love it. And of course, Polygon 1993, just another beautiful piece, kind of different, the way it's shifting between different kind of parts of the work. So I thought that was worth noting. And again, you have like 157,000 views. Views are the new likes almost. These are all related, but like it's the views at the end of the day, because you can have a lot of retweets, but if you don't have many views, but usually they correspond. But all to say, views are awesome. And Ranexteer with a cool new still life here. Cool new surreal still life, edition of 11 for 3 Tezos 70. And almost monochromatic, but then a little bit of color here. So always cool and always interesting. And there are 10 left at 370. Get it while you can. Remember the last one that got burnt? So you always kind of, if you like it, buy it. If you want it. Don't sleep on it. Annihilation by Sky Goodman. So moving over to the high heels here. It is high heel season, as Sky said. So just another beautiful work, a lot of exporting, I think, moving between softwares. And there's just a lot going on here. Interesting color, interesting mirroring, AI heels. So an interesting title, Annihilation, edition of 6 for 14. Let's just see what Sky was selling it for 6 Tezos on primary. Lorna Mills, the first person to buy. So that is great. And White Solitude, an edition of 1, AI artwork, Great Famine. And again, these brush strokes are just pretty insane. So here, a really interesting piece here by White Solitude. And a cool, another work by Clown Vamp. Again, this one's got a real Van Gogh feeling. We might have looked at this earlier. I saw this tweeted out and I thought, but if we haven't seen it, and if we have seen it, let's look at it again. Just a beautiful, again, reminiscent of Van Gogh a little bit in the painterliness and in the composition. It was a great, listen to that Twitter space from yesterday. Sum, Before Sleep. So another with the experimental random JPEGs, another with this kind of figure here that she's been working with. And a lot of the things she's been working with, the plants, the art on the walls, and everything. And then here you have even just some dots kind of on the wallpaper. Interesting piece. 5 Tezos, edition of 10, 3 left. And finally, Venta, Fading Emergence. So again, combining AI with digital painting or editing. As I use Midjourney, there's kind of like an editing process that I do afterwards, because it's usually there's a few little glitches in there that you want to kind of touch up. Fading Emergence, 6 left. Cool colors, kind of a different color, and even this patterning in the background, very interesting. And Shilly the Kid, check these out. These 3D noun glasses, Gold Series Densopoly official game piece. This was burned. So maybe there's another edition that will be made, but I thought that was pretty cool, GLB. And that is your show, everyone, just on time. Thank you for joining me once again, and until next time, take care.